USA Today for Friday, March 20th, 2026, and it is the first day of spring. The vernal equinox. Been a heck of a winter, so hopefully spring brings us some quick relief. So we'll kick it off with the USA Today Weekend Edition, the cover section, and occasionally they have a feature under the heading of Women of the Year. So let's take a look at this edition's Woman of the Year. Sarah Bond believes gaming has power to connect us all. Former Xbox CEO shapes future of play to be more inclusive. Dateline, Redmond, Washington. Sarah Bond finally remembers sitting next to her father playing King's Quest II, solving puzzles, navigating mazes, and unlocking doors, all in an effort to rescue the beautiful maiden Princess Valanis from captivity. At age 6, Bond had no idea where those mazes would take her, what was behind those doors in real life. How her video adventures in the land of Colima would land her in the front office at Xbox as the first black woman to helm a major global gaming platform before stepping away from the company on February 20th. I was completely a gamer growing up, Bond 47 told USA Today. My dad was a massive gamer, so it was one of the two things that we would do to spend time together. It was a big part of how we connected. It became formative in how she sees gaming as a way to share experiences and achievements with others who may not look like you, may not speak your language, may not live in the same country as you, and she set out to make that inclusive view of the world a reality. Unlike the classic path of coder turned studio head, Bond landed the job based on her experience in strategy and deal-making, skills she learned as a consultant at McKinsey & Company and during several years at T-Mobile, where she served as chief of staff to former CEO John Legere. Bond joined Microsoft in 2017, serving as a corporate vice president in charge of product and experience for game creators, and she was named president of Xbox in 2023. I always loved consumer tech, Bond says. At Yale, STEM and business courses called her name. She then earned a Master's of Business Administration from Harvard. After graduation, I decided I am going to go into consumer tech. I really love the intersection of the fast pace of technology with the ability to really touch consumers' experience. And at the time, people actually said to me, "Hey, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense." It was the early 2000s. We didn't have an iPhone yet, Bond says. Facebook wasn't an IPO, but she stuck with it. I never explicitly thought about gaming. I was more thinking about just impacting technology. And that's when it hit me that actually where I started was with gaming, that there was a big part of my experience growing up, but that I never had the opportunity to participate in it from the business perspective, she continues. So as soon as I saw the opportunity, it sort of clicked in my mind like, I am going to jump into this with 2 feet. Many saw her appointment as a breath of fresh air. Nearly 3 billion play video games every day globally, making it an estimated $522 billion industry. As many as 52% of gamers in the United States are women, according to the 2025 Global Video Game Report by Entertainment Software Association. And yet, only 5% of more than 60 gaming companies have women in leadership roles, and just 12% of leaders come from diverse backgrounds, according to a report by the financial tech company Xsolla. Bond's background uniquely prepared her to break the proverbial glass ceiling. I spent most of my life in positions where I didn't necessarily fit in, she says. I'm a woman who has always worked in environments that are male-dominated. I have lived in different places around the world. I'm a black woman who's often been in spaces where that's not the majority of people there. where most people are white. I used to find that very isolating earlier in my career, she continues. I realized at some point that it was really unlikely that I was ever going to run into someone who was just like me. Because of the variety of experiences I have had, because of the perspectives that I've been exposed to, it was all the more likely that I would have something in common with everyone I meet and that I should focus on that. So instead of seeing it as a weight, I see it as an opportunity to build bridges, more shared understanding, more advancement in how we look at the world, she says. And I get a lot of energy from that. At Xbox, she channeled that energy into helping the brand transition beyond the gaming console to an everywhere approach as cloud gaming grew. She spearheaded Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard and championed inclusion across the industry. I think my secret superpower is seeing patterns in the noise, white spaces and pockets of opportunity that others don't see, she says. True systems that help unlock opportunities and set direction to help teams really punch through and do things that are new. The ability to thrive in new environments is something she learned growing up. Bond's family, she's one of 7 children, moved 5 times before she was 10. Her father worked in telecom, and in those days, employees moved where their jobs dictated. New Jersey, Colorado, Massachusetts, and then at 10, Bond headed overseas to boarding school in England. She didn't know what was next, but she knew more was on the horizon. More mazes to navigate, more puzzles to solve, more doors to be unlocked. She credits her parents for her curiosity and determination. They always instilled in me a sense that I controlled my outcomes, that my effort was what really led to my growth, that it was totally okay to try something and not be perfect the first time in, she says. I think that's one of the things my dad was trying to teach me when we were playing games. Frankly, it's a great training ground for it because you can be playing a game, you're on the first level, you die, so what? But you don't really die, she continues, because you come back and then you try again, and you get a little further, and a little further, and a little further, and you realize that if you keep trying, and if you put the effort in, you're suddenly able to do things that when you first started, you could never do. So is game night a thing with her own kids? Oh, yes, she says. Her daughter, 14, and son, 11, are both gamers. It's reminiscent of the time Bond spent with her father. The beautiful thing that I discovered is that gaming is really unique relative to pretty much anything else you can do in the technology industry, and that it does this beautiful blend of art and science, she said. There's experiences that people can have in games that they couldn't have otherwise. Before her next big role, it's probably safe to bet that she'll enjoy some downtime. Her husband has been a stay-at-home dad, and before her Xbox departure was announced, she said she would like to swap jobs with him for a day. You know how your kids will only talk about their day right when they get in the car? I want to be that person in the car, she said. There will also likely be some time for a few other favorites. Bridgerton is a guilty pleasure. Having grown up in England, I love the English references, and it's just so beautiful and so decadent and always such a joyful and fun story, she says. And books are a lifetime love. The opportunity to just get through a couple more books a year, if I had an extra hour in the day, I would definitely take that. Bond helped the new Xbox CEO, Asha Sharma, settle into the role over the course of a few weeks. Another bridge from one woman to another, creating opportunities for other people and then seeing them succeed, Bond says, that's just the best. It is the best. So there you have it. This edition of one of the great women of the world. You are listening to reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, and the time is 10 minutes after the hour. And let's turn to an issue that is also getting a lot of attention currently. Kansas once tried a SAVE Act of its own. 2013 measure unraveled in practice and in courts. Dateline Washington. If you want to understand what might happen nationwide if President Trump's Save America Act goes into effect, ask lawyer Lauren Bonds, who fought and defeated a similar statewide law in Kansas nearly a decade ago. Bond was part of a legal team that sued Kansas and its Secretary of State, Chris Kobach, after they implemented a voter registration law that required proof of citizenship to register to vote, as Trump's proposal would. A federal judge ruled that the state law was unconstitutional and violated federal election laws designed to protect people from being disenfranchised or unfairly denied the ability to vote. By then, though, the damage had been done. At least 31,000 people were denied access to voting, and the judge's finding, including in a key statewide election in 2014, in which incumbent Republican Governor Sam Brownback narrowly defeated Democrat Paul Davis. Trump said his bill, the Safeguard America Voter Eligibility Act, or SAVE Act, is so essential to election security that he will stop signing bills until the Senate follows the House's lead and passes it. The GOP's push to do so has faced stiff opposition from Democrats, and while Republicans, who hold a majority in both houses of Congress, generally support the measure, many are unwilling to eliminate the Senate's filibuster and its de facto supermajority requirement to pass it, as Trump demands. Bonds and other voting rights advocates said that if Republicans managed to pass the Save America Act, it could disenfranchise vast numbers of eligible voters. It was tens of thousands of people in Kansas, Bonds, legal director for the American Civil Liberties Union of Kansas, or ACLU, told USA Today. Obviously, if you multiply that nationally, it could really deprive a bunch of people who are undoubtedly lawfully authorized to vote from being able to cast their ballot. Max Pflugrath, spokesman for Fair Fight Action, a voting rights advocacy organization, said 12% of people who tried to register in Kansas were prevented from doing so before the law was struck down in 2018. Kansas already showed us what proof of citizenship laws do: block eligible voters, not non-citizens, Pflugrath told USA Today. The SAVE Act could scale that nationally, meaning 21 million Americans without easy access to the newly required documents and 37 million who registered through systems it would dismantle could be blocked from voting. Here's what happened in Kansas and what it means for the current fight over the SAVE Act. Kobach, a Republican, introduced the Secure and Fair Elections Act at a news conference in January 2011, claiming it was needed to prevent fraud, especially to stop non-citizens from registering and voting. When deliberating, Kansas lawmakers cited unfounded rumors of undocumented immigrants at meatpacking factories in the southwest part of the state trying to vote, Bond said. As presented, the law seemed fair and logical in focusing on preventing non-citizens from voting. As such, Bond said, it enjoyed bipartisan support, including from some key Democrats. The Kansas legislature passed the bill in March 2011, requiring photo ID requirements for in-person voting and new security measures for advance mail-in ballots. The next month, then Governor Sam Brownback signed it into law. On January 1, 2013, the law's proof of citizenship requirements for voter registration took effect. Voters needed to produce a passport, birth certificate, or naturalization papers. It made Kansas the only state, besides Arizona, with such a strict requirement, Bond said. 6 months later, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled Arizona could not require proof of citizenship for people who registered using the National Mail Voter Registration Form created by the National Voter Registration Act of 1993. That ruling, with national implications, conflicted with parts of the Kansas law. In February 2016, the ACLU sued Kobach and the state on behalf of plaintiffs and the Kansas League of Women Voters. In doing so, the state and national ACLU took pains not to make the issue political and decided not to focus on whether it intended to help Republicans gain an edge over Democrats. Instead, Bonds said, they argued that it was a bad law, and that it was a bad law that was implemented badly by state officials who created chaos and confusion for people trying to register. USA Today reached out to Kobach, now the state's Attorney General, and the Kansas Secretary of State's office for comment, but did not receive an immediate response. In his opening statement at trial in March 2018, Kobach said that before the SAFE Act, the state had no way of knowing how many non-citizens were voting because the old method required people only to check boxes stating they were U.S. citizens and Kansas residents. Just having someone sign something is nothing, Kobach said, according to a courthouse news report from the trial. It is inadequate. Kobach used the metaphor of a leaky roof on a house to argue that the voter registration system was broken if even a relatively small number of non-citizens were able to register. If hundreds of drops are coming through, he said, we would say the roof is failing. 2 sets of plaintiffs ultimately sued, including Stephen Wayne Fish and others who said they tried to register to vote when applying for a driver's license but were denied for failing to submit proof of citizenship by state officials who said the new state law required it. Another case, led by plaintiff Parker Bednasek, challenged the Kansas law on broader constitutional grounds. As a lead lawyer from the state ACLU, Bonds helped coordinate the legal battle in tandem with attorneys from the national and state ACLU and other voting rights groups. The 2 lawsuits were consolidated and ultimately claimed that more than 31,000 voter registrations were blocked or suspended for failure to provide proof of citizenship. Many of those would-be voters tried to register through routine channels, like when getting their driver's licenses. They were placed into a suspended status when they did not submit additional documents. An unknown number of people were given bad information by state employees, especially at Division of Motor Vehicle offices. Others simply gave up on the process, the lawsuit claimed, because they couldn't get the required documents in time. One of the problems of this case was that the law was implemented shortly before an election, Bonds said. So a lot of people, even if they were on top of things, were in a position where they were not able to get the documents they needed to fix their ballots once they discovered they had not met the new registration requirements. Fish, who worked the overnight shift at an American Eagle distributor, applied to register to vote in August 2014 while renewing his Kansas driver's license. According to his lawsuit, the driver's license examiner did not inform Fish that he needed a citizenship document to register. Fish left the office believing that he had registered. When he later discovered he was not eligible, Fish tried to obtain a replacement birth certificate, but could not determine how to do so. He was born on a decommissioned Air Force base in Illinois, the suit said. So Fish scrambled to find his original birth certificate. It took 2 years and deprived him of the chance to vote in the 2014 general election, he said. In May 2016, Fish's sister located a copy of his birth certificate his mother had placed in a family safe before she died in 2013. He registered and voted in the 2016 election. Others included in Fish's lawsuit cited similar experiences including Kansas Department of Corrections employee Donna Bucci and English professor Thomas Boynton. Bednasek, the lead plaintiff in the other lawsuit, moved from Texas to Kansas in August 2014 to attend the University of Kansas and became a volunteer with the Kansas Democratic Party. After discussing the new law with colleagues, Bednasek canceled his Texas voter registration and tried to register in Douglas County, his suit said. When told he needed proof of citizenship, he said he didn't have it, and that he did not agree with the law requiring it. His voter registration application was canceled on March 4, 2016, and Bednasek filed suit in response. During the legal battle, the plaintiffs presented evidence of disenfranchisement. Kobach personally defended the case at trial, arguing that the SAFE law did not have a material impact on voter registration. One witness, called by the state, was Stephen Camarata, who was at the time the director of research at the Center for Immigration Studies. Camarata, described as an expert in the fields of demography, census data, voter registration statistics, and voter participation statistics, testified that there was actually an increase in registration and turnout from October 2010 to October 2014, and that therefore the law did not unduly burden Kansas' ability to register and vote, according to court documents from the case. The plaintiffs responded that his testimony had no bearing on the fact that tens of thousands of Kansans were unfairly disenfranchised. Despite Kobach's claims of widespread fraud, Kansas presented evidence of only 39 non-citizens who had registered to vote over 2 decades in 2016. Federal courts blocked the state from enforcing the proof of citizenship requirement for voters registering at motor vehicle offices. On June 18th of 2018, U.S. District Judge Julie Robinson issued a 118-page ruling holding that the Kansas law imposed an undue burden on eligible voters and violated the National Voter Registration Act. It also violated the Constitution, Robinson ruled, by infringing on the right to vote under the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause. In her ruling, Robinson said the law championed by Kobach disenfranchised tens of thousands of eligible citizens by preventing them from registering to vote before she issued a preliminary injunction. And she held that the registration process was especially burdensome for first-time voters, the elderly, and individuals with limited resources and time. Kansas fought the ruling, but a federal appeals court upheld it. In 2020, the Supreme Court declined to hear its appeal. Robinson had held Kobach in contempt for skirting court orders related to the law and failing to send postcards confirming registration for thousands of voters. In striking down the law, she ordered him to take 6 additional hours of continuing legal education. Finally, on September 10, 2021, the state agreed to pay $1.9 million in plaintiffs' legal fees. Since the legal battle began, Kobach unsuccessfully ran for Kansas governor and U.S. senator. He has become one of Trump's most vocal supporters in fighting for voting laws aimed at preventing non-citizens from voting. In November 2016, Kobach met with Trump soon after his victory and backed up Trump's claims that he would have won the popular vote instead of losing by nearly 3 million votes if illegal votes were discounted. I think the president-elect is absolutely correct when he says the number of illegal votes cast exceeds the popular vote margin between him and Hillary Clinton at this point, Kobach said, citing the same widely disputed study he used to defend the Kansas SAFE Act in court. In May 2017, Trump, via an executive order, appointed Kobach as vice chair of a controversial voter fraud commission charged with studying the registration and voting processes used in federal elections and identifying vulnerabilities in voting systems that could lead to voter fraud. We have had substantial number of non-citizens getting on our voter rolls since the mass immigration of the early 2020s, Colbeck told the New York Times that month. If other states are experiencing the same problem, then I think it would be appropriate for them to consider what Kansas has done. Trump established the commission, formerly known as the Presidential Advisory Commission on Election Integrity, amid the repeated assertions that millions of people voted illegally in the 2016 election. On January 3, 2018, Trump issued another executive order dissolving the commission before it could issue a final report, reportedly because it found no evidence of widespread voter fraud. You are listening to reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 26 minutes after the hour. Trump's choice to lead the Department of Homeland Security clears hurdle. Dateline, Washington. President Donald Trump's pick to replace Kristi Noem at the top of the Department of Homeland Security is on a glide path to Senate confirmation after a Democrat helped a key panel of lawmakers clear an important procedural hurdle. The Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs moved Senator Markwayne Mullin's nomination out of committee yesterday, setting up a full Senate vote likely in the coming week. The Oklahoma Republican only needs a simple majority vote to get the job, and with the GOP in control of the upper chamber, he will almost certainly get it. The green light followed a wave of 11th hour questions from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle about a mysterious foreign trip Mullin made while serving as a member of the House of Representatives. He has offered few details publicly about the mission, but has in the past made comments about experiencing war zones, even though he never served in the military or in the intelligence community. Why it was classified and who classified it is still a mystery, said Richard Blumenthal, senator and Democrat from Connecticut, told reporters after a closed-door meeting with Mullin about the issue following his March 18th confirmation hearing. There is no valid reason, in my personal opinion, for anything he told us to be classified. Senator John Fetterman, Democrat of Pennsylvania, ultimately supported Mullin, saying he didn't see anything shocking in the same meeting. The trip dealt with a whistleblower issue, and Mullin happened to be overseas, Senator James Lankford, a fellow Oklahoma Republican and close friend of Mullin, said. Mullin faced a brutal day of questioning on March 18th, including from some within his own party. Senator Rand Paul, a Republican from Kentucky, the chairman of the Senate committee that advanced his nomination, condemned him for comments he made sympathizing with a physical attack on Paul years ago that left the chairman with broken ribs. The pair famously do not get along, and in a rare sign of overt party discord in the Senate GOP, Paul is not supporting his nomination. Mullin seemed to offer a slightly more conciliatory approach to leading the DHS compared with his predecessor, saying he would not allow Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents to enter homes without judicial warrants and promising to step up the beleaguered agency's communications with Congress. DHS has been partially shut down for more than a month over Democrats' concerns with immigration enforcement, prompting long airport security lines and concerns about mitigating heightened terrorism threats in our country amid the Iran war. And we move on to the USA Today opinion section. And I present a piece written by Blake Fontenay. Mr. Fontenay is USA Today's commentary editor. His title of his opinion piece, Online Surveys Take Too Much of Our Time and Too Much Trust. We live in an uncertain world where we all could use a little reassurance or a pat on the back. That said, constantly being bombarded with online surveys is one of the most tiresome aspects of modern life. After spending half an hour on the phone with some faceless customer service rep at a call center, no one wants to spend another 5 to 10 minutes recapping the conversation. Yet, digital surveys keep asking, "How am I doing?" like insecure stand-up comedians trying to connect with their audiences. It's easy to see why this is happening. In earlier times, a lot of public surveying was conducted over the telephone or door to door. People do not answer their doors or their phones for strangers anymore. According to a poll published in 2025, Americans spend more than 10 hours online each day. Data collectors are just trying to meet us where we are, as the old saying goes. Still, the ease of reaching potential survey participants shouldn't be used as an excuse to survey us on anything and everything. In a society already swimming in data, there's such a thing as too much feedback. Not every routine online transaction is a magical experience worthy of a 5-star rating. Ordering tickets or buying socks isn't like dining in a swanky restaurant or visiting an exclusive resort. There's only so much that can be said about these mundane moments in everyday life. For example, I recently reserved a couple of tickets for a baseball spring training game. It took only a few minutes, so when I got a prompt to rate the sale, I gave it the highest possible mark. Well, guess what? Big mistake. A second later, there was another prompt asking me to elaborate on what made my encounter so special. I was stricken with writer's block. "I ordered some tickets from you online," I finally wrote. "You sent me a confirmation message. Where it goes from there, I don't know." A lot of this online surveying seems premature. Before going to see a new doctor, I was asked to fill out my medical history and insurance information online. When I was finished, the doctor wanted me to complete a survey about the app that recorded my answer. Bear in mind, to that point, I had done all the work. I was only going to that doctor to get a referral to a specialist. After I got the referral, the first doctor texted me a link to another performance survey. Again, at this point, I had received no actual treatment or advice. It's not hard to see how we got here. Technology makes it easy to replace one-on-one conversations. Another survey from last year found our average screen time to be lower than the other study, but still taking up almost a third of our days and trending upward in recent years. In a way, online surveys might seem more trustworthy. It's easier to be honest in a supposedly anonymous format. Less uncomfortable social interaction is required. And yes, it's very convenient. If you want to know if the new pizzeria is any good, or the mechanic down the street is likely to rip you off, you don't have to poll your friends and neighbors anymore. You can just check out reviews on Yelp. But who are these reviewers we are trusting? Did the owner of the business stuff the ballot box by ordering his employees to post fictitious but glowing reviews? On the flip side, did the guy who gave a 0-star review have a personal axe to grind? We can't know the agenda of people we are trusting with their happiness and, in some cases, our health. Honor systems don't work very well if they are gamed by dishonorable people. My guess would be many survey responses skew toward negativism. Anyway, anyhow, if you're happy about the service you receive somewhere, you may or may not feel motivated to offer feedback. If you have a bad experience, you're much more likely to let someone know. So, where does all this end? Probably nowhere good. Online surveys are likely here to stay. Even so, we don't have to fill every one of them out. And we can be skeptical of their findings, particularly if trips to the dentist's office start grading out as transformational outings rather than the less than pleasant chores that they are. Maybe somewhere along the way, people requesting all this survey data will realize that sometimes less is more. And let me start. At the end of this column, there will be no survey requesting your input. You're welcome. This guy, Blake Fontenay, nails it, man. These surveys are out of control, and I have no idea how rigged or not rigged they are. You are listening to reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 36 minutes after the hour, and we jump over to the USA Today Money section, or on Fridays, more properly known as the Travel and Tourism section. So we take what they give us, and here we go. And we'll kick it off with the feature story written by USA Today travel editor Kathleen Wong. Miss Wong's piece, Against the Clock. New Yorker seeing the world 24 hours at a time. On a Wednesday evening in February, Kevin Droniak left his apartment in New York City for a 7.5-hour flight to Zurich. He landed at 6 a.m. and spent all of Thursday skiing in the Swiss Alps. He flew back home that evening, landed at 7 p.m., and was back home to sleep in his own bed the same night. That's nearly 8,000 miles traveled in 24 hours. This isn't the first time Droniak, 28, has taken a day-long trip. He's been doing it for almost a decade, going to far-off destinations like Japan, Iceland, and Egypt. Each time, the experiences he can squeeze in just a day's worth of travel still surprise him. I'm like, it doesn't feel normal. It doesn't feel like it's possible. But then you're like, oh well, other things in life are probably possible too, Droniak told USA Today. He documents his microcations on social media with nearly 500,000 followers on TikTok as of February 25th. All he has with him is his backpack filled with basic toiletries like a toothbrush and camera equipment. Microcations, extremely short trips in which someone departs and returns from their home within the same 24 hours, are quickly rising as a new type of travel. This year, 25% of Gen Z and millennial travelers said they plan on taking a microcation, according to Expedia's recently released 2026 AirHacks report, which surveyed 1,000 U.S. adults in January. No longer is travel reserved for a long weekend or week of paid time off, or PTO. These quick getaways offer a taste of a destination without a big commitment or price tag. I just feel like I'm hacking the system, and that's what a day trip or micro travel feels like, said Droniak. We are all trained to think that when you fly somewhere, you have to spend the night, at least. But now people are shifting and like, actually, no. You could fly somewhere and have a day and go home. And here's what to know about microcations. It all started in 2016 when Droniak was in college and saw a cheap round-trip flight to San Juan, Puerto Rico for around $100. He realized that instead of spending the money he usually would on clothes shopping, he could visit a new destination. That's what shifted my whole mindset of like, okay, I could find these deals and then get an adrenaline rush of just being somewhere for a day and have a whole experience and then go home, he said. Puerto Rico has become one of Droniak's favorite microcation destinations. The island is just a short flight from New York, offering him an accessible, much-needed respite from the cold winter weather. I get the sun rays, I have a beach moment, and then I go home and I'm fully satisfied, he said. These microcations also give Droniak a little sample of the destination without the obligations of a longer trip like paying for a hotel. This is what happened when he went to Rome for a day, seeing the major attractions like the Colosseum. He left wishing he had more time in the Eternal City and has since returned for a longer visit. The appeal is simple. You can see more of the world without taking time off work, booking a hotel, or paying extra baggage fees, says Melanie Fish, Vice President of Global Public Relations for Expedia Group. Microcations can be tiring, but Droniak likes how they push his limits as a traveler. It's just such a thrilling form of travel to me because you really are go, 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 he added. He views microcations as just another category of travel, the way people backpack, cruise, or go to all-inclusive resorts. This is a type of travel that's not going to replace your other ways that you travel, but it's a way you could push yourself out of your comfort zone and do something different, he said. And he offers some tips for microcations. If the idea of going somewhere for less than one day sounds intimidating, here are some tips for your first microcation, according to Droniak. Number 1, start close to home. You don't need to fly halfway around the world for your initiating microcation. Droniak recommends first-timers visit somewhere with a flight of less than 4 hours. Some of the top trending international microcation destinations on Expedia are Toronto, Nassau, San Juan, Montreal, and Vancouver. Number 2, be flexible. Going on a weekday means you could not only score a good flight deal. According to Expedia, the cheapest days to fly in 2026 are Fridays, but you'll also probably run into fewer crowds at the top attractions. Number 3, pay attention to flight times. Droniak likes to land in his destination before noon and return home at night, so he has all day and some of the evening to explore. I'd rather be bored at the airport in the evening than rushing to the airport, he said. Next, prioritize sleep. Knowing his microcation will be a busy day, Droniak prioritizes getting as much rest as possible. He will take it easy the day before and go to sleep early, or sleep as much as possible on the flight. You have to think about the ways that you could just be able to feel your best self when you land, he said. And lastly, plan smartly. With such a limited amount of time in the destination, don't try to do everything. Droniak likes to pick one main area to explore or a couple of major sites to visit. Otherwise, it could get too exhausting and stressful. Alaska cruises are booming. That's right, booming. New ships set sail in 2026. And this is by Nathan Diller, USA Today travel contributor. Travelers will have new ways to see Alaska this year. A number of cruise lines are launching sailings to the last frontier in 2026, from luxury to large family-friendly and adults-only ships. About 65% of people visiting the state during the summer do so by cruise ship, according to Cruise Lines International Association Alaska, and demand is high. I think Alaska is always very popular, but we are seeing that ships are selling out way quicker than they used to. Joanna Kuther, a travel agent and owner of Portside Travel Consultants, told USA Today. With new inventory opening up this season, here's what travelers should know about Alaska cruises. Which cruise lines are adding Alaska sailings? MSC Cruises will launch its first ever Alaska sailings aboard MSC Posea on May 11th. The ship will be fresh from dry dock to add enhancements, including the line's luxury ship within a ship concept, the MSC Yacht Club. Virgin Voyages' newest ship, Brilliant Lady, will operate the company's inaugural Alaska cruises. The adults only cruise line will set sail starting May 21st. The Ritz Carlton Yacht Collection will debut its first Alaska cruises this year on its Luminara vessel. The first of those sailings will depart May 28th. Those join other operators such as Holland American Line, Princess Cruises, American Cruise Lines, Norwegian Cruise Line, Royal Caribbean International, Disney Cruise Line, and Celebrity Cruises, and more. What are the draws of Alaska cruises? Glaciers are a major attraction for visitors. One of the major draws is Glacier Bay, said Kuthar, and then the other one is definitely the wildlife. That includes bears, whales, moose, and salmon. In addition to its many natural wonders, the state also is a cultural destination where visitors can learn about its native people. And you might ask, what is the best time to take an Alaska cruise? I'm betting it's not the winter time. But here's the answer. That depends what you're looking for. The Alaska cruise season generally runs from April through October, and Kuthar said visitors will tend to see more wildlife between the end of June through August. That's super peak season, she said. That's also where you're going to have more families and more crowds. Some locals have also said those crowds are putting a strain on the very environment tourists are there to see. Travelers may find less packed ships and ports by visiting earlier or later in the season, and there are other perks. If passengers go in May, it's still a little bit snowy, so your scenery is going to be really cool, Kuthar said. Travelers visiting in September or October, meanwhile, could have a better shot at seeing the northern lights. Where do ships usually sail? The most popular itinerary is the Inside Passage, according to Kuthar. That often sails round trips from Seattle or Vancouver with stops such as Juneau, Skagway, and Ketchikan. People will go back to Alaska and do different routes, she said. This is a very good way to start. Other options include one-way cruises between Vancouver or Seattle and Anchorage. Travelers can also take cruise tours that combine sailings with land-based exploration, including train rides and tours of Denali National Park and Preserve. And here's some tips for Alaska cruises. Book early. Alaska itineraries sell out quickly, and so do shore excursions. Unique offerings like helicopter tours and dog sledding are popular, and there are only so many spots. Consider a balcony cabin. This is almost a must, in Kuthar's opinion. Crew members may make announcements about whales or other sightings near the ship, and guests with their own private viewing spot won't have to race out on deck. And pack carefully. Packing is an art when it comes to Alaska, Kuthar said. It really is, because you need so many things. Her top 3 picks are bug spray, layers of clothing for the fluctuating temperatures, and a waterproof jacket in case of rain. And we have another cruise story. Line's mega cruise ships keep selling out. Despite critics' concerns, passengers roll on in. Amy Valderrama Amaya went big on her first cruise. The 23-year-old sailed with her boyfriend and his family on Royal Caribbean's International Star of the Seas in January, one of the largest cruise ships in the world. Valderrama Amaya spent a week exploring the nearly 250,000 gross ton ship, from watching the torque show in the Aqua Theater to skating at the onboard ice rink. It was a lot of fun going on the rink, especially on a cruise ship in the middle of the water, the Seattle resident said. Like, who can say that? Valderrama Amaya researched the ship before embarking on the cruise to the Bahamas, Mexico, and Honduras, but admitted it was a little overwhelming in person. Even on the last day, I was honestly getting lost because it was just massive, but it was a lot of fun, she said. I definitely feel almost spoiled in a way that I got to experience such a big ship for my first cruise. That stacked lineup of amenities has helped vessels such as Star become a major hit for Royal Caribbean, sparking online chatter and driving record bookings. They're not the only ones. Megaships can often feel like the new normal across the industry. Here's why guests keep coming back and why those large vessels aren't as ubiquitous as they may seem. Why are passengers drawn to megaships? I think the draw for most people is kind of the theory behind bigger is better, said Raquel Major Holland, owner of Major Adventures Travel Agency. And so, especially new cruisers, they just make the assumption that the bigger ships are better than the smaller ships because they're going to have more amenities, which they do. Those can include some combination of water parks, roller coasters, rock climbing walls, surf simulators, and theaters, not to mention restaurants, bars, pools, and sun decks. There's something on board for everyone, she said, noting that the ships often feature entire areas geared toward kids or families and others designed exclusively for passengers 18 and older. Megaships are so big that guests may not even feel like they're on a cruise, a potential perk for those wary of being on open water. What I've learned is a lot of my clients like the bigger ships because they're almost like floating cities, Major Holland said. There's a lot to see and do, and on a lot of them, you don't really get a lot of ocean views, especially when you're in the inside, the promenade areas. However, there are drawbacks as well. While many of the vessels are designed to spread people out, Major Holland has found they can feel crowded, especially in popular venues such as buffets. Sometimes it can be a challenge getting some of those reservations for some of the aqua shows and the comedy shows and things because there are so many people on board trying to get to the same things, she said. Some ports can't accommodate ships of that size, so itineraries may be more limited than on smaller vessels. And while the megaship is a destination in itself for many guests booking those cruises, Major Holland noted it can be challenging to see and do everything, even on a 7-night itinerary. Still, the appetite for those vessels remains strong. She's booking many for clients and has noticed that when she uploads videos about an older, smaller ship to her social platforms, they don't get as many views. I feel like the megaships are in high demand, Major Holland said. Jason Liberty, chairman and CEO of Royal Caribbean Group, said in a January earnings call that Star of the Seas and Celebrity Excel and new and smaller ship from Celebrity Cruises were exceeding expectations, while the upcoming Icon-class ship Legend of the Seas was experiencing very strong booking trends. Norwegian Cruise Lines will also launch the biggest ship in its fleet, Norwegian Aura, in 2027, and Carnival Cruise Line will begin welcoming the largest vessel in its history, and that of parent company Carnival Corp, in 2029. Marilyn McAleer, a cruise travel analyst for Focusrite, traced the early days of megaships to the launch of Royal Caribbean's Oasis of the Seas in 2009. Everything exploded in the late 2000s when Oasis came out, and it was so much bigger than all the rest, she said. And it had such incredible creativity. The cruise line introduced the neighborhood concept, for example, dividing the ship into distinct areas. After that, vessels continued to get bigger and more creative. But not all ships are getting bigger. While megaships got a lot of attention, there still are plenty of other vessels operating among CLIA member line ships sailing between 2023 and 28. 34% are small, with less than 1,000 lower berths, the standard fixed beds in a cabin, while 39% are midsize with between 1,000 and 3,000 lower berths. That balance in the fleet underscores the range of options available to travelers, from expedition and luxury experiences on smaller ships to large scale vessels with extensive amenities and entertainment offices, CLIA, the industry's leading trade group, said. There is a ship to meet the needs of just about every kind of traveler. The organization and its member lines also work with destinations and ports to support tourism management needs while also protecting the economic benefits that cruise tourism brings to communities. While there is a range of megaships set to launch in the coming years, Mackler said their long-term future is an open question, especially given that there has been significant growth in the luxury cruise market, which tends to be on the smaller side. I mean, there's just so many destinations, she said. There are destinations that are pulling back from allowing these huge cruise ships to pull into port. You can't sustain 7,000 people dismembering at the same time, and so I don't think they can go any bigger. I have no interest at all in being on a cruise. I just can't see being locked in place on a can and no, doesn't appeal to me, but it looks like I'm in the minority. You are listening to Reading of Articles and Features from USA Today for Friday, March 20th on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We will return for more readings after this short break. Your reader for this hour has been me, Chet Walczyk. I'm glad you were able to join me. I'm glad I was able to provide you with some information and entertainment. And the first day of spring. We're getting there. Take care. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next time.
continue now with our reading of articles from today's issue of the USA Today. Your reader for this hour is Nancy. So it's Section B, which is life. And here's a story from movies. Gosling's alien pal is a rock star in Project, from Brian Truitt. Ryan Gosling's newest co-star is high maintenance, had an entourage around him at all times, and required his own wardrobe department on set. He's also a space alien. He's in the hotel right now in the presidential suite. I kid you not. He's not here with me during press. Gosling jokes about Rocky, the rock-like, spidery creature who is the fellow lead in the sci-fi adventure Project Hail Mary, in theaters now. In the movie, directed by Phil Lord and Chris Miller, middle school science teacher Ryland Grace is sent into space to figure out how to counteract an organism that consumes the sun's light at such a degree that Earth faces an ice age in mere decades. Grace wakes up from his space coma to find himself in another solar system, all alone. His fellow crew members died during the trip. Luckily, the lonely Grace finds an unlikely pal in the lovably eccentric Rocky. The extraterrestrial's ship comes into orbit with Grace's, and the reluctant astronaut freaks out at Rocky's arrival, but then tries to communicate with Rocky through dancing. Grace uses a computer to turn Rocky's sounds into a human voice, James Ortiz. That's when Grace discovers that Rocky's there because his planet faces the same problem. They wind up teaming up to help each other, becoming best friends as well, as once engineering genius Rocky's fashions a protective ball for himself, roommates. The director spent a year working with creature effects supervisor and Star Wars veteran Neil Scanlon on the alien design. Each side of his carapace, its face, even though it doesn't have a face, was different and could make you project a different feeling onto it, Miller says. We put all these carvings onto his body, like tattoos of a cultural history. He has a house, tartan. He has a patch for his mission. He's got all these engineering slide rules and other things etched into his body. We gave ourselves opportunities to make him interesting, but you never know. Is this going to look hokey? A lot of time was invested in Grace's characterization, how Gosling would play him to what his classroom looked like, to how he'd hang on his spaceship. But an equal amount of work had to go into Rocky, Lord says. He had a whole costume department devoted to him. We did fittings for months trying to figure out what would look good on him, what would be complimentary. He was meticulously crafted, sculpted in clay, scanned, put into a computer. He's made with love, and there's history, so you can feel the accumulation of just human creativity going into him because he's a lead character. Rocky was brought to life through advanced animatronics and a team of puppeteers, dubbed the Rocketeers, led by Ortiz. Had it been CGI, it would have been much easier, Gosling says. We would have just put a tennis ball there and gone about our day. But because we chose to have him be a physical element, he was a bit of a diva. He had 6 puppeteers with him, almost like a glam squad or something, all dressed like ninjas. They all have to find a place to be, moving around in the shot, organizing it all. It was a struggle, but in the best way, because that's what Grace and Rocky's relationship is. Creating that connection between Grace and Rocky was an important piece of the puzzle. The movie's secret sauce is Ortiz, who did Rocky's dialogue and banter with Gosling while filming, and it was obvious that it was bringing out something special in Ryan having a performance to react to. And they were bringing out something special in each other, Miller says. Lord concedes there was a thought of someone else playing Rocky, as it would have been a really cool casting opportunity. We tried a lot of voices in our minds, and ultimately, it's great that Ortiz is somebody that you haven't discovered yet, that the audience doesn't have familiarity with, that actually they are a stranger. As Miller, James became Rocky, and it was very clear. Gosling appreciates how the heart of the movie is the relationship between these two beautifully drawn characters, he says. Rocky's just the coolest alien you're ever going to meet and the best friend you're going to have. I'm so excited for now the world to get to have him as a friend too. Streaming. Peaky Blinders movie returns to the fray from Brian Alexander. At the end of 6 fan-beloved Peaky Blinders seasons in 2022, Thomas Michael, Tommy Shelby, faked his death and rode off from his gangster past on a white horse. But that illicit past keeps pulling Shelby back, at least for the movie Peaky Blinders, The Immortal Man. The additional story always was part of the plan for Shelby, a World War I veteran who rules his family's criminal empire from Birmingham, England, according to series creator Stephen Knight. I have a clip of myself saying after season 1 that I would take this story into the Second World War, says Knight, who wrote the World War II era Immortal Man screenplay. I was very confident, considering that this was just a tiny BBC show at the time. But Tommy Shelby was never going to ride away into the sunset and live happily ever after. Here's what you need to know about Immortal Man, which streams on Netflix March 20th after a 2-week theatrical run that started March 6th. Who's returning from Peaky Blinders to Immortal Man? The tough part about chronicling a crime family is that characters get killed, such as wife Grace Shelby, played by Annabelle Wallis, or die off-screen, such as Aunt Polly, after the death of actress Helen McCrory. Immortal Man begins with Tommy, a recluse in his home, haunted by his past and writing a Don't Do This memoir. His crime-averse sister Ada, played by Sophie Rundle, has taken over Tommy's seat in the House of Commons. But she isn't allowed in his house. Tommy reluctantly meets Ada in her car outside his gates to talk. Loyal Johnny Dogs, played by Packy Lee, returns, still looking after the boss. Hayden Stagg, Stephen Graham, the Liverpool docker who clashed with Tommy in season 6, comes to his one-time foe's aid in the movie. Wait, is Arthur Shelby in the Peaky Blinders movie? Older brother Arthur Shelby survived the digging of World War I tunnels behind enemy lines with Tommy, became his right-hand man in the family business, and somehow stayed off the TV series Casualty List. But Revenant star Paul Anderson, who played fan favorite Arthur, has dealt with public personal issues, was fined for crack cocaine possession in 2024, and has made it clear in interviews that he was left out of Immortal Man. Arthur still appears in the movie, and his presence is a major plot driver. Knight says Arthur's diminished role was for story reasons. Tommy has done a lot of bad things for good reasons, and his family, says Knight, who adds that Arthur's movie plight haunts Tommy. I wanted to find Tommy in exile for what happened and offer him a chance of redemption. What is Peaky Blinders, The Immortal Man, about? Tommy would have lived a quiet, bucolic life in central England, but was forever changed by the horrors of World War I after volunteering to fight for his country. Tommy, whose family has Romani ancestry, had an affair with a Romani woman, Zelda, before leaving for war, as mentioned in season 6. Zelda died. Tommy survived the war, emerging with a jaded outlook and a superpower, never fearing death again. The couple's illegitimate son, Erasmus, Duke Shelby, appeared in season 6, played by Conrad Kahn, and became a part of the Peaky Blinders family. Amid the backdrop of the World War II German bombing of Birmingham, retired Tommy is stirred into action by Zelda's sister, Kayla, played by Rebecca Ferguson. Kayla wants to stop Duke, now played by Dunkirk star Barry Keane, who is chaotically running the Peaky Blinders gang from being consumed by the lifestyle. Duke has turned out badly, Knight says, but there's an innocence about him, along with him being the ruthless gangster. Tommy is pulled back into gangster life to prevent his firstborn son from becoming a victim of it. While he's at it, the unpatriotic Tommy has reason to thwart the Nazis, a secret of which is working with Duke's Peaky Blinders. Now, Tommy has all of these personal reasons to get back involved, Knight says. Not to mention that the gypsies are being targeted by the Nazi regime. Is Peaky Blinders movie based on a true story? The Peaky Blinders were a violent Birmingham-based street gang in the 18 and 1900s. However, the series is fictional, as is Immortal Man. The movie works in real-life historical events, such as the deadly German bombing of the Birmingham Small Arms Factory on November 19, 1940, which killed 53 employees who refused to take shelter. Likewise, Operation Bernhard, a Nazi plot to masterfully counterfeit millions in British currency to crash consumer confidence, stirs the plot in a fanciful direction. Operation Bernhard is the most incredible true story that was kept secret by the British government for years, Knight says. Will Peaky Blinders become a Netflix series again? Knight confirms plans to restart Peaky Blinders with a new series after the movie. The TV revival will follow a whole new game of Shelby's in the 1950s after Immortal Man. We're doing a new series, Knight says. I can't talk about it, but the Peaky Blinders story will continue. Books. Moriarty's Big News sequel, new season, from Claire Mulroy. One book and 2 seasons weren't enough for fans of Big Little Lies. The good news? There will be more. Best-selling author Liane Moriarty has announced Big Little Truth, a sequel set 10 years after the events of the first book, is coming on August 25th. The book will be the basis of Season 3 of Big Little Lies, the Reese Witherspoon and Nicole Kidman produced HBO series in which they star alongside Laura Dern, Zoe Kravitz, and Shailene Woodley as the incendiary group of wealthy moms at the center of a murder investigation. In Big Little Truths, these women will return, but their children, now teenagers, played the biggest role. In an exclusive interview with USA Today, Moriarty shares what she's excited for fans to see in the next book and season. Moriarty waited to write a Big Little Lies sequel. Moriarty felt fans' demand to expand the Big Little Lies universe, but wasn't ready until now. The novel came out in 2014 and was adapted into the hit Hulu series that premiered in 2017. Moriarty wrote an unpublished novella to serve as the basis of 2019's Season 2, The Aftermath of the Murder. Right from the beginning, because of the show, there was talk about writing a sequel, but I was never interested right away because you put your characters through so much and it just didn't make sense for me to write something that followed on directly, Moriarty says. A time jump always made sense to me. Her children were young when she wrote Big Little Lies, similar ages to the classroom crew of Ziggy, Amabella, and Chloe. As they grew, she started contemplating a new story from their perspective. I had to wait for my children to become teenagers, and then they did, and there was a wealth of new material there, Moriarty says, laughing. In Big Little Truths, the kids are now in high school. Goodbye, playdates. Hello, drugs, sex, and alcohol, the book's description reads. Reconnecting at Madeline's 50th birthday party, a strange man has been lurking around the school, asking supposedly innocent questions. Their principal's office receives a severed finger in the mail, Moriarty says, of the plot's inciting incident. In the first book, the parents at the school, they provide the Greek chorus explaining the action and what happened. In this book, the teenagers, the kids are the Greek chorus. So they're being interviewed about what happened. So the first thing that happens is they say, well, it all began at Madeline's 50th birthday. Getting to know the young characters as teenagers was the best part of writing the book, Moriarty says. In what ways are they their parents' children? How are they bucking their upbringing? Similarly, rewarding was slipping back into familiar older characters. Normally, when I start to write a book, I'm getting to know the characters as I write them, Moriarty says. Here, she recalls thinking, oh, here you are, Madeline. I know exactly how you'll react to this. Big Little Lies series and Laura Dern influenced Moriarty's writing. Season 3 of Big Little Lies is imminent, the cast has said, and Moriarty now confirms Big Little Truths will be the source material. It's still early days, though she says she's very hands-off with the series. I always said I only ever wanted to be an interested bystander, Moriarty says. Big Little Truths, though, is wholly Moriarty. The team behind the series had no input on the plot or direction of the book. When she dipped back into the story, she needed to remind herself, and us, that there are differences between the two. For one, the book is set in Australia, while the series takes place in California. And Madeline has an extra child, Fred, who is cut from the series. But Moriarty says she can't pretend the series didn't have some impact on her writing, notably the series' all-star cast. It's all Laura Dern's fault because she was so amazing as Renata. It was impossible for me to not give her a bigger role in the book, Moriarty says. You couldn't put Renata in a corner. Streaming. Daredevil reflects a chilling take on real events, from Brendan Morrow. Thinking about Matt Murdock's epic, decade-long rivalry with arch-enemy Wilson Fisk on the Marvel series Daredevil Born Again gives Charlie Cox flashbacks to childhood. Do you remember when you were losing your baby teeth and there was one tooth that was wobbly for what seemed like a decade and it just wouldn't leave, Cox says. It was just a constant irritation and a pain in your mouth, and it wouldn't go. That's how Matt feels about Wilson Fisk. He's embedded himself in him, and he can't rid himself of this person. The feeling is mutual for Vincent D'Onofrio's Fisk, though the actor draws a tastier comparison. Fisk looks at Matt like a piece of corn stuck in his teeth. It's so annoying, D'Onofrio quips. Cox and D'Onofrio know the dynamic inside and out after playing their respective roles of Murdock, a blind lawyer who moonlights as the vigilante Daredevil, and Fisk, a crime boss known as Kingpin, since the original Netflix show premiered in 2015. But the Disney Plus revival, Born Again, shook up the status quo in a big way at the end of last season by having Fisk, now the mayor of New York City, institute martial law and outlaw vigilantism. This tees up a sophomore season premiering March 24th, all about the resistance against Fisk, as Matt and his allies fight from underground. The storyline turned out to be more timely than the show's writers anticipated. Scenes in Season 2 depicting Fisk's anti-vigilante task force conducting raids are reminiscent of images of the Trump administration's immigration enforcement. Actions of recent months, despite being conceived and filmed before then. We tried to build the story of a rise to power and a resistance, and we weren't really looking at the headlines as much as we were looking into history, showrunner Dario Scardapane says. Now, did we know that the imagery that we shot was going to be on the news 2 months ago? No, it's humbling, it's chilling. You take no pleasure in that. Matt spent much of the first season of Born Again rejecting his daredevil persona, but in season 2, the tables are turned. Now Matt is considered a missing person after an attack on his apartment, so he's no longer able to move through the world as an ordinary lawyer and effectively is forced to be daredevil all the time. In one season 2 scene, Matt's ally, Karen Page, played by Deborah Ann Woll, asks if he ever misses being Matt Murdock, a poignant moment Cox says was meant to evoke the ending of The Graduate. It's a fun thing to embody Daredevil fully and almost forget who Matt Murdock is and what he is and how he operates, Cox says. Less fun was the fact that this required the actor to wear his Daredevil suit in almost every scene. From a practical point of view, it's immensely difficult, he says. Matt's full embodiment of Daredevil parallels with Fisk embracing his true brutal nature as Kingpin. These two characters were in denial of who they were in the first season, in denial or pretending, says executive producer Sarah Amant. Now they're finally wearing their suits, both literally and figuratively. Born Again Season 1 shocked fans from the first scene by killing Matt's best friend, Foggy Nelson, played by Eldon Henderson. A stunning twist that continues to reverberate. The new episodes show more of Matt's struggle with grief and PTSD, and the trailers have revealed Henson will make an appearance in Season 2. Matt will never be the same again, Cox says. There will not be a day that goes by that he doesn't think of him and think of it. From an acting point of view, that's weirdly kind of a dream, because it just gives it so much texture. The show can get quite heavy, but bringing some comedic relief will be Kristen Ritter, who's back as Jessica Jones for the first time since Netflix's eponymous series ended in 2019. Cox praises the actress for bringing so much energy and enthusiasm and ideas and excitement to set, and says her return was long overdue. Daredevil once seemed dead for good after Netflix canceled the original series in 2018. But things are moving full stream ahead on Born Again, with a third season already in the works. Once fans see the ending of Season 2, they'll know exactly where Season 3 is going, Scatterpane teases, adding the writers were inspired by a particular run in the comics. With knowledge of what's in store, Cox and D'Onofrio dance around spoilers, but reveal the show is building to some massive plot points that initially gave them pause. There's a pitch that was presented to both of us that is seismic, that we can't talk about, Cox says. It's something that the show escalates towards, that I was equally excited about and excited to explore, and also concerned by, because it's something that, if not handled appropriately, couldn't be good. It's a big, bold story point. I believe and I hope that it's been handled really well. D'Onofrio assures fans the story Cox refers to is well executed, but notes the co-stars talk through their anxiety about it. We worry about everything, he says. This points to the collaborative nature of the actors' relationship, which Cox argues is a big part of the show's success. After playing characters who can't stand each other for more than a decade, the bond between the pair has only grown stronger. We've really become good friends, D'Onofrio says. We get along great, and we have very similar opinions about the story we're telling. We talk constantly. I guess it's going to be one of those things where I don't think I'm going to have a better relationship with another actor. I was about to say the same thing, Cox agrees. We've probably ruined it going forward. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of the USA Today on the Naga Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 38 minutes after the hour. Now we're on to the sports section, which is section C. Arizona billed for March, proof of leap by the Big 12, from Blake Topmeyer. Fran Francilla's job calling Big 12 games gives him a front row seat to the best action in college men's basketball. But that's where he stops you. Don't label broadcasting Big 12 hoops work. They paid me to travel, not to work, Francilla, ESPN's veteran color commentator and a former coach, says affably. I've been blessed because I've watched the league grow up over 20 years. Along the way, Francilla became ESPN's voice of the Big 12 and an unofficial conference advocate. It's easy to advocate for the Big 12 in a season when the conference supplied peak entertainment and premier performance. The SEC led all conferences with 10 men's NCAA tournament bids, a show of its depth. But ball players recognized the best batch of hoops lived inside the Big 12. Now, to back that up on the final exam, that is the NCAA tournament. The Big 12 earned high bids. Francilla counts 3 with Final Four potential. Number 1 seed Arizona, and number 2 seeds Houston and Iowa State. That list would be bigger, he says, if not for injuries to Texas Tech's J.T. Toppin and BYU's Richie Saunders, a pair of Big Ten ballers who went down in February. As for national championship potential, start with Arizona. I give Arizona as good of a chance as anybody in the field to cut down the nets in Indianapolis. Francilla, who coached Manhattan to a mammoth NCAA tournament upset of Oklahoma in 1995, told me. Arizona is a top March Madness championship contender. 2 of Arizona's key bench players started on last year's team that reached the Sweet 16. That speaks to the quality of a starting lineup in which every player averages in double-digit scoring. They are as complete a team as there is in college basketball, Francilla said. First of all, they are an old-school bludgeon-you-inside team with 3 terrific post players. They have as good of a leader at point guard, Jaden Bradley, as any team in the country. Oh, we've yet to mention dynamite freshman guard Braden Burries, the team's leading scorer. Try to go devil's advocate and point out Arizona's history of March Madness shortcomings the last 25 years, and Francilla uncorks the ultimate comeback. I can say the same thing about an entire league. The Big Ten, he says. Fair point. Anyway, why should these Wildcats fret about what happened to the 2023 team, which lost to 15th seeded Princeton in the first round, or the 2018 team that got blasted by 13th seeded Buffalo in the first round? The last 3 times Arizona earned a number 1 seed in the last quarter century, it got bounced before the Final Four. That's for you to consider as you fill out your bracket. But whispers of the past are not for these Wildcats to fuss over. They play like they're in a cocoon, Francilla said, so I'm not sure how much of the noise they hear. If you need more than one man's opinion, there's also Ken Pomeroy's rankings. Basketball nerds cite Ken Pom as if it's college basketball's holy literature. His metrics rank Arizona, Houston, and Iowa State among the 6 best teams, making the Big 12 the only conference with more than one team tucked inside the top 6. The Big 12's Big Monday games, with John Sciambi and Francilla on the call, showcased premier teams in elite environments with future NBA stars. Big Monday has become must-watch TV, Francilla said. Truth. The Big 12's TV audience on Big Monday doubled this season, according to Commissioner Brett Yormark, to average 1.7 million viewers. Considered evidence of how the Big 12 survived conference realignment. Big 12 basketball emerged strong on this side of realignment. Realignment is blood sport, and the Big 12 hit an inflection point in 2021 after Oklahoma and Texas set out for the SEC's richer pastures. The impending exodus of the Big 12's two richest brands cast the future of the conference into peril. Would it be rated for parts? Merge with the Pac-12? Neither. Option 3, fortify. The conference steadied by adding BYU, Central Florida, Cincinnati, and Houston under outbound commissioner Bob Bowlesby. Then, Bowlesby's successor, Yormark, secured a media rights extension with ESPN and Fox before looting the Pac-12 for Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah. While the Pac-12 collapsed into a shell of its former self, the Big 12 went from endangered species to basketball behemoth. The league came out much stronger on the basketball side than anyone would have realized, Frischella said. Yormark describes his conference as the second best basketball league in America behind the NBA, and he promised to cash in when the conference hits the media rights marketplace again in 2030. In the meantime, the Big 12 is on national championship watch, with Arizona forming the tip of the spear. They have a countenance about them, Frischella said of coach Tommy Lloyd's Wildcats. That is built for the tournament. Why don't execs take women seriously? From Nancy Armour. There's always a winner and loser in contract negotiations, and until sports executives, more often than not men, start taking the women across the table from them seriously, they're always going to be the loser. The WNBA and its players finally came to an agreement on a new contract on March 18th, after almost 18 months of talks. Scratch that. A month of real talks, because it didn't dawn on the W and its NBA overlords until the last few weeks. The players not only knew their worth, they weren't going to take a deal that reflected anything else. The league is lucky a deal got hammered out in time to preserve the entirety of the regular season, but this last-minute drama was needless, the result of the W and the NBA not recognizing that the game has changed. Just as U.S. Soccer found out 4 years ago, women are over being treated like charity projects. They know the economics as well as anyone the suits bring to the table, hell, probably better, and aren't going to be fooled by chump change offers. They see the skyrocketing ratings, they see teams outgrowing the W's, the W's traditional mid-size arenas. They see the sponsors tripping over themselves to get in on what, especially when compared with men's sports, is a growth industry. They see people who are savvy enough to realize there is a boatload of money to be made, not betting an eye at $250 million expansion fees, a fivefold increase from 2 years earlier. When W owners cried poor or presented offers that might have looked fair but were really just smoke and mirrors, this generation of female athletes would not be played for fools. We're not just players that run up and down the court and do amazing things. Some of us are business owners. Some of us are foundation owners. So we know what it takes. Las Vegas Aces center Ajay Wilson, she of the signature Nike line, and said last July at the All-Star Games. When we see the revenue, when we see things flowing into our league, we want that. We are going to demand that because we see it and we see the growth, Wilson added. And when you see a business growing, obviously the people that are working for the business should have some say in that as well. So I think we know what we're talking about. That it took until the last few weeks for the league to realize that it is, I'd like to say, shocking. But any woman in every industry has her own story of being marginalized and underestimated. At some point, power brokers are going to have to recognize they can't get away with it anymore. There was a time when women had to accept less because it was their only way to get more. The U.S. women's national team needed a contract that gave them salaries at one point because they didn't have a professional league like the men. W players were willing to go without charter flights in the last CBA because they needed salaries that offered a living wage. The NWSL is still flying commercial because that paled in comparison to higher salaries and the need for professional level soccer support staff. But the days of taking their bosses at face value or having to accept crumbs in exchange for the continued existence of their leagues or teams are over. The W is in its third decade, while the NWSL is in its second. Owners have invested millions in brick-and-mortar statements on the league's futures, from practice facilities to the Kansas City Current's purpose-built stadium. And this is what? Year 7 of this boom in interest in women's sports? By the time the WNBA's new CBA expires, the landscape is going to look vastly different than it does right now. The women knew that and weren't going to accept a deal that didn't reflect that. Did they get everything they wanted? Of course not. That's not how negotiations work. While revenue sharing will double to almost 20%, that's still less than half of what NBA players get. But W players got enough. The salary cap will jump to $7 million from $1.5 million, and the minimum salary will now be $300,000. That they are the clear winners in these talks, just as the WSWNT was when it got equal pay in its current contract with U.S. Soccer. The days of shortchanging women are over. Maybe sports executives will finally get that through their thick skulls by the time the next CBA rolls around. PGA Tour rookies coach, also a school math teacher, from Adam Shippick. PGA Tour rookie Michael Brennan has the only swing teacher among the pros who also teaches algebra to kids. For the last decade, PGA professional Adam Harrell has doubled as a full-time math teacher, primarily 6th grade students, at Farmwell Station Middle School in Ashburn, Virginia, after 6 years teaching special education. Hitting a golf ball is not as important as learning to read, Harrell said, but it's all intertwined in a way. Teaching is teaching. After school during weekdays and all days on Saturdays, he can be found coaching talented young golfers at 1757 Golf Club in Sterling, Virginia, where the 13 and under and 17 and under PGA Junior League teams each qualified for the national championships 3 years in a row. Harrell doesn't coach those teams, but instructs several of the players. Jay Brennan, who won the 2025 Bank of Utah Championship in October, and enters the week ranked number 44 in the official world golf ranking, began working with Harrell at age 12. It takes a certain type of person to be a middle school teacher, Brennan said. He's patient and understanding and has a way of relaying information in a way that he doesn't tell me, but shows me the concept, and we develop the field together. I bet his teaching background helps with that a lot. Harrell, age 51, began his career working at Burning Tree Club in Bethesda, Maryland, a famed retreat for U.S. presidents, politicians, and officials. Charlie Briggs, the club's longtime general manager, was impressed with Harrell's hustle and work ethic and asked him one day, shortly after he started on the job, why he had wanted to get in the golf industry. To teach, Harrell answered. I never really stated that to the point, Harrell recalled. Briggs arranged for a winter job working for esteemed teaching professional Jim McLean in Miami, and that's where he learned the skills that have made him a highly respected teacher of the swing in his own right. It really helped prepare me for this tremendously, Harrell said. I also never forgot that Jim made this statement in one of our staff meetings. He said anyone can give a golf lesson, but to be truly a great instructor, you have to develop players. I took that to mean I need to develop a kid and get them to the higher level. Enter Brennan, a native of Leesburg, Virginia, who was taught the game by his dad, a good player at River Creek Country Club, but who recognized that he had taken his son as far as he could go. Seeking a golf coach To build on the solid foundation that he had laid, Harold and Brennan's father met at a local sandwich shop to discuss more than a lesson plan. Brennan's father explained that he thought his son had the potential for greatness. He asked me a lot of poignant questions about my teaching philosophy, and I guess I said the right things because we started working together after that, said Harold, who also works with Alexa Pano, an LPGA pro, and Michael Masel, a Korn Ferry Tour pro. Brenna blossomed into a three-time Middle Atlantic amateur champ, 2017 to 19, the only player to win 3 in a row in the over 100-year history of the championship, and continued his success at Wake Forest, where he won 8 times in college. Harold recounted a time that convinced him that Brennan was headed for stardom. He was caddying for Brennan at the Virginia State Amateur, and Brennan wanted to hit a gap wedge from 120 yards into the wind to a back flag at a par 3. Brennan's shot landed on the green, but it spun back, leaving a long birdie putt that he missed. Next hole, same yardage, and Brennan pulled the same club. That's when Harold stepped in. I put the bag down, Harold recalled, and I said, "Michael, would you like to learn how to play golf or not?" He looked at me and said, "What do you mean?" I said, "I want you to hit a 122-yard shot with a pitching wedge. A 1 yard left of the pin, hit it straight, and if you hit your spot, it should spin back into the hole." So he takes the wedge, flights it a little lower, and it lands behind the pin, 1 hop, and spins back into the hole. I'm like, bam, so this kid takes direction very well. And in that singular moment, I'm like, all right, we got a lot more growing to do, but he's on the path. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of the USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Readings Service. The time is 57 minutes after the hour. Analysis. An imperfect ending. Why UConn women may not win NCAA crown for the 13th time in 2026. From Mitchell Northam. Coach Gino Aramo's UConn Huskies have 12 national championships, more than any other program in college women's basketball by a wide margin. Entering the 25-26 season women's NCAA tournament, the Huskies are undefeated with 34 wins, the overall number 1 seed, and the overwhelming betting favorite to run it back as champions. But being the top seed doesn't guarantee that UConn will win another title. In fact, since 2017, the number 1 overall seed has won the NCAA tournament 3 times. Baylor in 2019 and South Carolina in 2022 and 24. Can UConn be beaten in March Madness? Can the lethal combination of Sarah Strong and Azzi Fudd be stopped? Let's take a closer look to find out how the Huskies might be dethroned. Rebounding. This is something Arema has harped on all season. Despite having arguably the best player in the country on the front court, the Huskies aren't an elite rebounding team. Out of 363 Division I teams, UConn ranks 139th in total rebounds per game, 37.4, 96th in defensive rebounding rate, 71.9, and a mediocre 204 in offensive rebounds per game, 11.3. Now, the argument against the last stat there is that UConn doesn't miss all that much. It leads the nation in field goal percentage, so the Huskies don't get the opportunity to grab their own misses as much as other teams. But rebounding has been something that has concerned Arema. You don't need any talent to be an offensive rebounder, Arema said after UConn's win after Creighton on February 11th. All you need is when the ball leaves somebody's hand, you automatically are putting yourself in position to chase it. The ones that don't go in, I want to get better at getting some of those back. Since 2010, all but 4 women's national champs have ranked in the top 30 in rebounds per game the year they won the title. Two of those outliers were Auriemma's teams that won championships in 2016 and 2025. Three-point defense. On the surface, UConn's three-point defense is pretty strong. The Huskies allow opponents to shoot 27.4% from behind the arc, 22nd nationally. However, UConn ranks last in the nation in percentage of points allowed from three-point land at 38.9% and opponent three-point rate at 40.3%. UConn has allowed its opponents to make 223 three-pointers this season, which ranks 308th nationally. The Huskies have given up double-digit three-pointers in a single game 5 times this season. It's worth noting that 2 of those games, on a neutral court against Michigan and at Villanova, were the closest games UConn came to losing this season. The Huskies beat the Wolverines by 3 points, and Villanova led UConn at halftime. The blueprint. Villanova might have revealed a blueprint to beating UConn when the Wildcats hosted the Huskies on February 18th. But a lot of it, if we're being honest, is based on luck and UConn creating its own problems. First, UConn got off to a sluggish start in that game, turning the ball over 8 times. In the first quarter, Second Strong got into foul trouble, picking up her third in the second quarter and fourth early in the third quarter. Third, Villanova got hot from three-point land, making 11 shots from behind the arc. And fourth, the Wildcats nearly matched the Huskies on the glass, losing the rebounding margin by just 2. So how did the Wildcats blow a 5-point lead and go on to lose by 14 points? Well, they turned the ball over 26 times and let UConn flip those cough-ups into 28 points. Strong finished with a superb foul-free fourth quarter, too, with 11 points, 3 boards, and an assist. The close call with Michigan was similar. UConn didn't start slow, and Strong didn't endure foul trouble, but the Wolverines made 12 three-pointers and kept it close with UConn on the glass. The errors for Michigan were turning the ball over 14 times and allowing the Huskies to score 18 fast break points. A few less turners for the Wolverines, and maybe the result is different. So what's the blueprint for beating UConn? Make three-pointers, attack the glass, and keep the Huskies off it, and don't turn the ball over, and pray they start slow and Futter Strong fall into early foul trouble. Easier said than done, right? But Villanova and Michigan nearly pulled us off to varying degrees. There are many teams in the NCAA tournament better than Villanova and a handful stronger than Michigan. And this is March, where madness is not uncommon. Strickland's LIU, Joke to a Sweet 16, from Paul Meyerberg. This time, 3 years ago, Long Island University went into the offseason as the unquestioned worst team in college men's basketball, winners of just 3 games in Coach Rod Strickland's debut, 2 against teams from NCAA Division III. This time a year ago, the Sharks were still stinging from a loss to St. Francis in the Northeast Conference Tournament semifinals, after finishing second in the standings in the regular season. A rocky, step-by-step construction process has led to March 20th, when Strickland and the number 16 Sharks will face number 1 seed Arizona as a heavy underdog in the opening round of the men's NCAA Tournament West region. I was just looking for LIU on that board, Strickland said on Selection Sunday. Actually seeing it. It's a great feeling for everyone in the room. Over the course of Strickland's 4 seasons, LIU has gone from abysmal, 2022 to 23, to flat-out bad, 23-24, to postseason contenders, 2024 to 25, to the program's first tournament appearance since the university system consolidated its Brooklyn and Long Island athletic departments in 2019. Simply reaching this point is the culmination of a 4-year journey. LIU turned the embarrassment of Strickland's debut and the pain of last season's tournament near miss into perhaps the most impressive rebuilding project in this year's field. Last year it burnt, said senior guard Jamal Fuller. It carried over to this year. We all made sure that this year it wouldn't happen. We all did what we were supposed to do. From day one, we came in here as a group, and no one tried to belittle anybody. Building on last year's NCAA miss, the seed of this unexpected NCAA appearance was planted in the days after last year's exit from the conference tournament. The 24-25 season was a breakthrough, sure, but the Sharks were focused on what could have been. LIU finished 17-16 overall, posting the program's first winning season since 2021-22, but lost 10 games by single digits, including 3 losses in overtime. We lost a lot of games that we should have won, Fuller said, but we learned from that. In the wake of the loss to St. Francis, the Sharks gathered to outline the expectations for this season: to win the NEC regular season championship, tournament championship, and yes, the national championship. That's what it's about. We started this as a unit, said Strickland. This call to become regular season conference and the NCAA champions. It started with all of us in a room talking about it. By the summer, LIU had added in a 7-person recruiting class that joined key holdovers such as Fuller and fellow guard Malachi Davis, both of whom were selected to the preseason all-conference team. I have to give them a lot of credit for sticking with us, for believing in us, Strickland said of the Sharks' returning core. Among the additions were guard Greg Gordon, who previously played at Alabama Birmingham and Iona, and guard Jomo Goings, a 6'5" junior who earned all-conference accolades at Slippery Rock University. Over the course of the summer months and preseason, the Sharks weathered early dissension as they blended the incoming class with the returning roster. It was a lot of arguments about who was going to be who's going to lead or what, said Gordon. But eventually, we just kind of chose the fact that we'll prioritize winning over feelings. That's kind of been our biggest thing. After going 6-7 in non-conference play, including road losses to future tournament teams in Illinois and Georgia, the Sharks won 11 of 12 to open NEC actions and fulfilled their promise as the league's unanimous preseason favorite. At the end of the day, that's what this is about, said Strickland, giving them the best experience we've had and we're having. A major gamble has paid off for LIU and Strickland. It's not uncommon to see former NBA players leading teams into the NCAA tournament. Strickland is one of 6 in this year's field, joining Hofstra's Speedy Claxton, Central Florida's Johnny Dawkins, Nebraska's Fred Holberg, North Carolina's Hubert Davey, and Kentucky's Mark Pope. During his 17-year NBA career, Strickland developed a reputation as a mercurial talent who, when harnessed, could rival any of the league's top point guards. That reputation lingered into the start of Strickland's coaching career, which began as the director of basketball operations at Memphis, before he served as an on-court assistant under former South Florida coach Orlando Antigua from 2014 to 2017, and an off-court support staffer for John Calipari at Kentucky. Despite his limited resume, that Strickland accepted the job at LIU in 2022 represented a major gamble on both ends. The Sharks administration was rolling the dice on an unproven coach, while Strickland was betting he could avoid the type of pitfall that could come to define his coaching career. I had to bet on me, he said, and bet on that I could define the moment or the environment and try to make it work and make it happen. I was betting on me and the people I could bring around to help elevate this place. He rarely references his NBA career, according to players. Gordon didn't even know Strickland was a big NBA guy when he arrived on campus, he said. Asked by a teammate if he knew of Strickland's background, Gordon replied, "Not really." But a professional career that still clings to Strickland led to raised eyebrows when he accepted the LIU opening. Why would someone with his level of name recognition choose to make his debut as a head coach at a program miles removed from the sport's upper crust? Because of the challenge, said Strickland. It's never about the job, like itself, he said. For me, it was all about growth. I feel like I've done so many things in basketball, and this was just like another thing to conquer. I wanted to see if I could do it. I wanted to see if I could change the environment as a head coach. More than anything, I probably came here for more personal growth than anything. Like, I was given an opportunity. I would never walk in somewhere and think, it's beneath me. LIU was a great opportunity, and it was an opportunity to show that I could change the environment. I could help young people get better. I could help the staff. Does LIU have a chance at upsetting number 1 seed Arizona? This year's team is Strickland's most talented as a whole, he said. Looking ahead to the tournament, the Sharks have assets that typically play well in March: a productive and veteran backcourt, rim protection, and solid perimeter defense. Led by Fuller's 16.4 points per game, the 4 primary ball handlers, Fuller, Davis, Gordon, and Goings, account for 75.4% of the Sharks' scoring. All 4 average in double digits, along with at least 3.5 rebounds and 2.2 assists per game. Goings was the only one out of this group not to earn all-conference accolades. LIU also ranks 10th nationally and 3rd among mid-major programs with 5.4 blocks per game. It also ranks 1st in the NEC and 70th in the country with 7.8 steals per game, and 1st in the NEC and 73rd nationally in allowing opponents to make 31.9% from deep. Arizona remains a daunting challenge. The Big 12 regular season and conference champions have gone a combined 24-2 against Quad 1 and Quad 2 competition. LIU is 0-4 in such games and entered the tournament on a 9-game winning streak, punctuated by wins against Iowa State and Houston. Regardless, we're going to go out there and do what we have to do, Fuller said. Well, two number 16 seeds have defeated number 1 seeds since the tournament expanded. Most recently, fellow NEC member Fairleigh Dickinson beat Purdue in 2023. The top-ranked Wildcats opened as nearly 30-point favorites, meaning an LIU shocker would qualify as the biggest upset in tournament history by point spread. Opportunity is opportunity, said Strickland, and you've got to start somewhere. Everybody's path and how it happens is just different. Classic gonna bring out the best in us, from Tyler Dragon. Are NFL players better than flag football athletes at flag football? The answer to the contentious debate could be determined March 21st at the inaugural Fanatics Fan Football Classic. The Fanatics Flag Football Classic is a newly structured competition that includes 3 12-player teams. Team founders and Team Wildcats are comprised of current and former NFL players and other standout athletes who were drafted into teams the night of March 18th in a night at the Waldorf Astoria, Beverly Hills. Tom Brady and Jalen Hurts are the captains of team founders. Ashton Genty, Alvin Kamara, Rob Gronkowski, Antoine Winfield Jr., Devonta Smith, Stephon Diggs.
The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a serialized